Imagine walking into the home of a senior corporate executive who brings home a crisp $200,000 a year. The lawn is manicured like a golf course. A luxury electric SUV sits in the driveway, and inside, the countertops are pristine Calicotta marble. But if you could pull back the skin of this house and look at the invisible geometry of the bank accounts, you'd find a human being lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, gripped by a cold, suffocating panic. They aren't worried about starvation. They're worried about falling off a treadmill they didn't realize they signed up for. They feel completely, undeniably broke. And the most terrifying part? They have absolutely no idea how they got here. We live in a culture that treats wealth like a basic math problem. We're told that if you increase the input, your income, the output of financial security automatically follows. But humans are not calculators. We are walking bundles of insecurity, evolutionary baggage, and social anxiety wrapped in a business suit. This is why a staggering number of high earners are drowning in high-income poverty. They have mastered the art of making money, but they are utterly defenseless against the psychology of spending it. The truth is, your bank account isn't a reflection of your intelligence or your work ethic. It's a mirror of your deepest psychological wounds. Consider the story of a man named Richard. In the 1980s, Richard was the definition of an American success story. He was a Harvard-educated executive at a massive tech firm, earning a salary that placed him comfortably in the top 1% of the country. To anyone watching from the outside, Richard had won the game. But Richard had a specific, quiet desperation. He needed everyone else to know he had won. He bought a massive, sprawling mansion in Connecticut, complete with its own private lake and a staff to maintain it. He drove imported sports cars. When he went to high-end restaurants in Manhattan, he didn't just tip the waiters, he would hand out $100 bills to the valet drivers just to watch their expressions change. He was intoxicated by the feeling of being looked at. But money behaves like a fluid. It flows directly into the containers our ego builds for it. Within 2 decades, the tech industry shifted, the executive bonuses slowed down, and the crushing fixed costs of Richard's lifestyle remained exactly the same. The massive mortgage, the upkeep on the private lake, the insurance on the luxury fleet. It didn't care that his income had dropped. Richard filed for bankruptcy. The mansion was sold at a fraction of its value to pay off creditors. A man who made millions of dollars ended up with less than a blue-collar worker who saved $50 a week. Now, contrast Richard with a completely different kind of man. A man named Ronald. Ronald spent his entire life working in rural Vermont. He spent 25 years fixing cars as a gas station mechanic and another 17 years sweeping floors as a part-time janitor. He lived in a tiny 2-bedroom house he bought for next to nothing, drove a second-hand truck, and patched his own clothes. To the casual observer, Ronald was just an old, quiet man passing through life unnoticed. When Ronald died at the age of 92, his small-town neighbors opened the local newspaper and were completely stunned. Ronald hadn't left behind a stack of unpaid bills. He had left behind an estate worth over $8 million. He gave millions to his local library, millions to a hospital, and left a massive trust for his stepchildren. How does a man who swept floors for a living completely outperform a Harvard executive with a 6-figure salary? It's because financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill. It's about how you behave, not what you know. Richard was brilliant at the mechanics of finance, but he was a novice at the psychology of enough. Ronald didn't know anything about advanced economic theory, but he mastered his own ego. When you make $200,000 a year and still feel broke, you're suffering from a psychological phenomenon known as lifestyle creep. But it's more accurate to call it the social escalator. When you're making $40,000 a year, you eat at local diners and drive a beat-up sedan. You feel fine because the people around you do the same. But when your income jumps to 6 figures, your zip code changes. You move into a neighborhood where your next-door neighbor is a surgeon who just put in an in-ground pool. Your co-workers wear watches that cost more than your first car. Suddenly, your baseline of what is normal gets violently hijacked. You don't buy the $70,000 luxury SUV because you're greedy. You buy it because you're sitting in a parking lot at a corporate office where every other car looks like that, and your brain subtly whispers that if you don't buy it, you don't belong. You start paying for a lifestyle not based on what makes you happy, but based on what keeps you from feeling inadequate. The danger of the social escalator is that it has no top floor. If your goal is to feel successful by comparing yourself to others, you will always lose, because there is always someone making $300,000, $500,000, or $5 million. Your income rises, but your expectations rise at the exact same pace. It's like running on a treadmill where someone keeps subtly bumping up the speed. You're running faster, sweating harder, burning more energy. But if you look out the window, you're in the exact same spot. You aren't building wealth, you're just financing an illusion. And because every single dollar of that $200,000 is spoken for before it even hits your account, allocated to the heavy mortgage, the private school tuition, the country club membership, you realize that you have created a prison made of gold. You are one missing paycheck away from absolute disaster. And that is why, despite the massive number on your tax return, you feel utterly, terrifyingly broke. And that golden prison is incredibly exhausting because it forces you into a bizarre, hyper-delusional state of mind where you honestly believe you are just living comfortably while your bank account screams otherwise. Think about how we actually handle a salary bump. When that promotion finally hits and your income jumps from $100,000 to $200,000, you don't celebrate by securing your freedom. No, you celebrate by upgrading your problems. You trade your perfectly functional kitchen for one with an artisanal waterfall island. You trade your vacation to a crowded Florida beach for an exclusive eco-resort in Tulum, where the salads cost $40 and taste like grass. We laugh at this, but it's a deeply tragic psychological trap. It happens because we confuse rich with wealthy. And mistaking those two words is the exact reason you can pull in a massive paycheck and still feel like you're drowning. Being rich is entirely about current income. It's loud. It's highly visible. It's the person driving the brand new sports car, posting photos from the first-class cabin, and wearing clothes with giant luxury logos stamped across the chest. Rich is easy to spot because its entire purpose is to be seen. It's a performance designed to project status to complete strangers at a red light. Wealth, however, is completely silent. Wealth is the money that hasn't been spent. It's the sports car you chose not to buy. It's the luxury watch you left at the store. It's the stock portfolio quietly compounding in the background while you drive a 6-year-old Honda. Wealth is the option value, the raw, unadulterated freedom to wake up on a Tuesday morning and decide to quit your job, change your career, or take 6 months off to clear your head without asking a single person for permission. The problem is that our brains are deeply visual creatures. We can see rich instantly, so we copy it. We can't see wealth, so we assume it doesn't exist. We look at the guy making $200,000 who spends every single dime of it on an upscale lifestyle, and we think, wow, that's what success looks like. We don't see the crushing credit card debt, the leased vehicle anxiety, or the complete absence of a safety net. We only see the shiny surface, and we destroy our own financial peace trying to replicate a mirage. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a massive hole at the bottom. It doesn't matter how fast you pump the water in. If the hole expands every time the water level rises, the bucket will always feel empty. Look at modern corporate culture. We have turned lifestyle inflation into a competitive sport. You work 80 hours a week to get a bonus, and the moment you get it, you immediately hand it over to a landlord, a car dealership, or a high-end clothing boutique just to signal to your peers that the 80 hours were worth it. It's a vicious, self-inflicted cycle of financial masochism. You are literally trading your youth, your energy, and your mental health for a collection of status symbols that lose half their value the moment you take them out of the box. The most brutal realization of all is that no one is actually looking at your status symbols anyway. There is a glaring glitch in human psychology called the man-in-the-car paradox. When you see someone driving a magnificent $200,000 supercar down the street, you almost never look at the driver and think, wow, that guy is incredibly cool and sophisticated. Instead, your brain immediately bypasses the driver entirely. You imagine yourself in the driver's seat, thinking about how cool you would look if you owned that car. We spend money we don't have to buy things. We don't need to impress people we don't even like, all while failing to realize that those people don't care about us. They are only using our possessions as a canvas for their own private fantasies. You are destroying your financial freedom to buy admiration. But admiration cannot be bought. It can only be rented, and the rent increases every single year. And that rent is paid in the most valuable currency you will ever possess, your control over time. When you are trapped on that high-income treadmill, burning through $200,000 a year just to maintain your baseline, you haven't actually built a successful life. You have simply entered into a high-stakes contract with your own anxiety. You can't take a lower-paying job that fulfills your soul. You can't walk away from a toxic boss who demeans you. You can't spend 3 months sitting by the bedside of a sick parent because the structural overhead of your life requires you to keep grinding every single day, without fail. The ultimate value of money has absolutely nothing to do with buying nicer things. The highest dividend money pays is control over your time. The wealth equation. Highest income plus zero savings equals zero control. Modest income plus high savings equals absolute freedom. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want, is the highest form of wealth that exists. It provides a level of happiness that no luxury leather seat or marble countertop can ever hope to replicate. When you have a buffer of savings, when you possess true wealth instead of just a loud, rich lifestyle, you possess options. If a recession hits, you aren't terrified of a layoff. You see it as a chance to pivot. If an unexpected medical crisis emerges, it's an emotional challenge, not a financial catastrophe. Yet, we routinely trade this priceless freedom for the temporary dopamine hit of a purchase. We do it because we live in a society that measures your worth by what it can see on the outside. We have been conditioned to believe that saving money is an act of deprivation, a boring chore meant for the overly cautious. But saving money isn't about restriction. Saving is simply the gap between your ego and your income. The brutal truth. You do not need to buy everything you can afford. True financial strength is the quiet confidence to let an extra $50,000 sit in a bank account, completely invisible to the world, doing nothing but buying you peace of mind. Think back to Ronald, the quiet janitor who amassed $8 million. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit a fortune. He simply understood a truth that the Harvard executive could never grasp, that wealth is built by refusing to let your desires outpace your income. Ronald didn't care about impressing the neighbors. He cared about his own autonomy. He died with an abundance of choice, while the tech executive died with an abundance of bills. If you are making 6 figures and still find yourself living paycheck to paycheck, it is time to stop looking at your budget and start looking at your reflection. The solution isn't to hustle harder, pick up a side gig, or wait for the next major promotion. The solution is to have a brutally honest conversation with your own insecurities. Ask yourself what you are actually trying to buy when you swipe that card. Are you buying a product, or are you trying to buy respect? Are you paying for utility, or are you paying to cover up a fear of being left behind? The gold prison you've built only stays locked as long as you agree to hold the key. The moment you decide that your freedom is worth more than the collective opinions of people you don't even care about, the walls begin to crumble. You can step off the treadmill whenever you want. You can choose to downsize the performance so you can upsize your peace. Stop financing an illusion for an audience that isn't even watching. True wealth isn't about showing everyone how much money you make. It's about quietly knowing exactly who you are, what you value, and having the absolute freedom to live life entirely on your own terms.